We are live. We are live. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, we are live. And this morning here on Man Talk Live, I have a question for you. Are you going through a crisis in your life and you're not sure how things are going to change for the better for you as a man, for you and your family? Well, this morning, we want to talk about 5 important tips that's going to help you to overcome crisis and change in your life. And we're starting right now. Praise the Lord, everyone. Welcome to Man Talk Live. I'm your host, Walter Strong, where we share helpful tips to inspire men like yourself to raise the standard of manhood in your life so that you can be a great husband, a devoted father, a man of integrity who serves God and who serves your community. And so if you're new here this morning, let me know in the chat where you're watching me from. Give me a hashtag Team Live in the chat. If you're watching the replay of this episode, give me a replay, hashtag Team Replay in the comments section as we get into this content. And so this morning, we want to talk about 5 important tips to help you to overcome how to deal with crisis in your life, how to deal with things with change in your life for the better. And so without further ado, hey, let's get into the content. Grab a pen, grab a pad. It's time to go to work. Crisis and change. How do you deal with it in your life as a person? When you're faced with crisis and change, are you a person whose first reaction is to panic and to get upset? Or is your response one of you understand that crisis is normal for everyone? Everyone's going to go through a crisis. That crisis is an opportunity for better things for you in your life to come. When we look at the world today, we see people going through crisis in various different types of ways. There are some crises that happen in our life that are outside of our control, such as financial crisis, job crisis, where we end up losing our jobs because companies go out of business or layoffs are executed by the company. Sometimes crisis can happen because of health concerns. Sometimes crisis can also happen because of things that we brought on ourselves. But no matter how the crisis may come in your life, the question is, how will you deal with it? How will you overcome it? Especially when you have others looking to you for guidance to get them through the crisis. Sometimes the crisis can be a storm. Sometimes the crisis can be a wildfire. Sometimes the crisis can be a natural disaster. But then sometimes the crisis doesn't impact us in those ways because we are out of harm's way, but yet we're still going through a storm on the inside of our hearts and our minds. We're going through wildfires of worry and anxiety. We're going through crisis where there is shaking and uncertainty about our future. And we're not sure how to deal with crisis. Now, if I'm describing your dilemma in your circumstance, let me know in the chat and give me a hashtag, that's me. That's me in the live chat. So tip number 1, if we're going to overcome and deal with crisis the right way in our lives, not panicking, not overreacting, but properly responding, we have to come to the conclusion that crisis is normal and a part of our lives. We're all going to go through a crisis at some point in our life. It is said sometimes you're either coming out of a crisis or getting ready to go into a crisis. I'll say that again. Sometimes you're coming out of the crisis and you're going into a crisis. But whether if you're coming out of a crisis or going into a crisis, it's important to understand how you leave that crisis and you go to the next crisis. Because adversity, if it's seen with the right perspective, can be used as a tool to help develop us and grow and become better individuals, not just morally, not just physically, but even in our relationship with God, in our relationship with God. I want you to think about this principle that I once heard the late Dr. Edwin Lewis Cole discuss, the principle of entering and leaving. When you left to go to work this past week from your home, what type of attitude and mindset did you leave your home? Did you leave your home uh, with the right attitude and spirit and heart of gratitude and appreciation? To go into your job that you had the opportunity to be productive, to be a person who could add value to others, that you would help through your career or through your job. If you left your home with that type of mentality and attitude, when you left your home, you entered into your job with that mindset. But if you left home discouraged, if you left home dreading about getting ready to go to work last week, and you felt that the work environment was a toxic work environment that you just hate going to, but yet you just have to go to do a job for a paycheck. Guess what? The way you left your home, you entered into that job with that same mindset. It's called the principle of entering and leaving. If you left your job, let's flip that. If you left your job and you had a very difficult time at work this past week, where you felt you were stressed, you felt like the things that happened were just coming out of left, and it just seems like it just nonstop. People just kept bringing you their problems to the point where you felt overexhausted and overwhelmed, to the point where you just had a bad attitude. The way you left that job, if you're not careful, you bring that attitude, that mindset, that mentality back home, and then your wife, then your spouse, and especially if you're a woman listening to me this morning who has an important man in your life, if you left your job with that dilemma, you brought it home to the family. It's called the principle of entering and leaving. Now, why is that principle important? It's important because when you go through a crisis, when you enter into that crisis, again, sometimes crisis can happen outside of our control. It's not something that we brought upon ourselves. It just, life happens. It's normal. But how you enter into it with the right attitude, with the right mentality, most importantly, realizing and understanding, if God be for you, who can be against you? Who can be against you? If you enter it, and it's said in the book of Psalms 100, to enter his gates with thanksgiving, enter his courts with praise, be thankful unto him, and to bless his name. Now, if we understand that from a biblical standpoint, from a biblical concept of the principle of entering and leaving, then when we enter into our crisis, we're thankful, we're grateful, knowing that God is on our side. We're grateful and thankful that we know we have our strength. We're grateful and thankful that we have the activity and the uses of our limbs, that we're clothed in our right mind. And if we don't have the answer to deal with the crisis, to how to overcome the crisis, we know someone who is greater on the inside of us, that is greater than the crisis that is before us. If you want to overcome and deal with crisis in your life, you have to accept the understanding that crisis is normal and a part of our lives. The question is, how are you going to enter it, and how are you going to leave that crisis? Sometimes people go through crisis in their life and they see change, where instead of it making them better, they unfortunately cause them to be bitter. Instead of them letting the crisis make them better, they end up becoming bitter. And so as a result, they feel victimized. They have the victim syndrome. I'm being victimized. This Why is life doing this to me? Why is this happening to me? Life is not fair. Newsflash, life is not fair for any of us. But though life may not be fair, we understand that we have a God who is greater than the life that we live and we go through, who has our times in his hands, who has our walls of our lives ever before him. Jeremiah 29:11 says, "For I know the thoughts that I think towards you, thoughts of peace and not of evil, but to give you an expected end." So if he allows me and you to go through a crisis, we have to understand it's normal, but there is a greater purpose on the other side of that crisis, which brings me to tip number two. Tip number two: crisis will come to get me and your attention. A crisis will come to get me and your attention, because sometimes we can go through in life where things are a bed of roses, and life is on easy street, and it seems like, hey, the bills are being paid, little Johnny and little Jane are being obedient to their parents, and they are honoring their mother and father, that their days may be long upon the earth. Everything is going well, health is all going good. And then all of a sudden, in the middle of the night at 2, 3 in the morning, you get a phone call that there is an emergency. And that emergency, that crisis, gets your attention. Sometimes the crisis can happen as a result in our homes, because there is a need to get our attention because of a crisis of communication, poor communication in the home between you and your spouse, a crisis between you and your sons and your daughters, your children. Sometimes crisis happens because of communication issues. Sometimes as a man, it's not what you say, it's how you're saying it. And you don't realize that, particularly with women, if they had fathers who who instead of talking to them to encourage them, they talked at them, the tone, instead of talking with them, they were talking at them, they were talking down at them, the tone. And now here you are having a crisis in your communication with your spouse or with your children because of your tone. It's not what you're saying, it's how you're saying. Or it could be what you're saying from the perspective and the attitude of how you're seeing it, because you're being closed minded. You're seeing it from your lens, you're seeing it from your family history. And as a result, you're in a crisis. And then you're wondering, why is it not, there is no communication? Why is communication breaking down between me and my wife or my spouse? Why is communication breaking down between me and my son? And then when you try to get the last word, all you hear is a slammed door closed in your son and your daughter's room. Sometimes crisis comes to get your attention because there's a crisis in communication breaking down. Sometimes the crisis is financial because of poor money management and not handling finances properly, living above our means instead of living within our means, trying to keep up with the Joneses and spending credit, buying and making purchases on credit cards and only paying the minimum payment instead of paying the credit card off at the end of the month. And now there is a crisis because of poor money management. But it's getting your attention because you're wondering why there is not enough money to pay the light bill, to pay the cable bill. Why is there not enough money to pay the rent or the mortgage? Why is it that the car payment is now late and you've been reported on the credit bureau for over 22 times for being late for the last 30 days. Maybe the financial crisis has come to get your attention, because it brings me to point number 3. It is requiring change in your life. It's requiring change in your life. If you're going to overcome and know how to deal with crisis in your life, you have to understand that crisis is normal. You have to understand that crisis will come to get your attention. You have to understand crisis will require change in your life. I'll let that breathe for a moment. I need you to let that just ponder in your mind. Meditate on that for a moment. Crisis requires change. God doesn't allow crisis in your life, in my life, to destroy us. God does not allow crisis to come in your life, in my household, in your household, to punish us. But God will permit crisis to happen in your life to require change, to get us to understand we need to make some changes in our life. First, our change deals with our relationship with Him. If we are not walking in our relationship with Him the way He has said in the Word of God that we should walk, that crisis shouldn't push us away from God. It should bring us closer to God. It should not push us to the point where we close our Bible. It should encourage us to open our Bible and to begin to seek Him and to seek His will, because He's requiring change. I want you to think about the story, if you've ever heard the record or the story of the history of the prodigal son. The prodigal son who said to his father, "Give me the portion of my inheritance that falls to me." Now, if you understand biblical history, he was the younger brother, and if anyone was going to ask for inheritance, now the prodigal father, the father of the prodigal son, he's alive, and he's saying, "Give me the portion of my inheritance that falls to me," and he just overlooks all order and protocol. But because of the heart and the love of the father, he divides the portion of the inheritance to the oldest first, and then to the youngest. The youngest gets his inheritance. He says, "See you later, Dad. I'm going to go live life." And he goes out into a far country, and he begins to live life and spends his money on all types of things he should not be spending his money on. Financial crisis. And then after he spent up all that he had of his inheritance, guess what? Now he has to go get a job. But as he's trying to get a job to support himself, a famine happens in the land. And as a result, now he is to the point where he is reduced to now living in the hog pen. Crisis. Does that kind of sound like what's going on in today's times? Crisis. And now he's in a hog pen. And he begins to think and to ponder and remember, hey, the way I'm living, the servants of my father's house live much better than the way that I'm living. And then he makes the decision and say, hey, this place where I'm in, this is not the end of the story for me. I need to put a pin in that for you right there. I need to put a comma right there for you. What you're going through right now is not the end of the story. It's not the final chapter of the book. There is another chapter in your life that has to be written by the author and the finisher of your faith. So let's continue. The young prodigal son says, in the hog pen, if you've ever grew up in on the farm and you saw farm animals, and the pigs and hogs are in mud, and he's smelly. He's got mud all on his face, mud all in his hair, mud all in all his clothes. But he says, I'm going to get up and I'm going to go back to my father's house. You see how the crisis began to require change of him to go back? And then, as he was making his way back to his father's house, the father who had been on, biblical from a biblical standpoint, it says that he had been searching and seeking that one day his son would return. And here he sees him coming. And he gets off the porch, he runs, and guess what? He embraces him, though there's mud all over him, mud all over his face. He smells like pigs and swine, but he still embraces him and loves him despite what the condition and the mess that he's in. What am I saying? Crisis comes to require change of us. It requires change of us. Some of us, as men, or if you are a woman listening to this who's married to a man or who cares about a certain man in your life, and you see that you are living beneath what God intended for you. But the crisis has come to require a change of you and me. It was requiring change of me and you. So if you're going to deal and overcome crisis in your life, especially if you want to be a great husband, a devoted father, a man of integrity, if you want to be a man who's going to reject passivity, engage with God and engage with your family, if you're going to be a man who's going to overcome crisis, you have to accept responsibility. You got to accept responsibility and acknowledge your mistakes and embrace change. Acknowledge you've missed it and embrace change. Hey, if you're getting great value out of this episode of Man Talk Live this morning, those of you who are watching me live in the chat, let me know where you're watching me from. Give me a hashtag Team Live. If you're watching the replay, give me a hashtag Team Replay. Click that thumbs up button that you're watching me on YouTube, whether on your mobile phone device, or if you're watching me on your tablet or desktop or laptop, give me a thumbs up. Share this on your favorite social media platform, which brings me to tip number 4. If you want to deal and overcome crisis in your life and understand that God is requiring me and you to embrace change in our life, you can't panic. You can't panic when you go through a crisis. You can't panic and lose your head in a crisis. You can't panic and start falling apart emotionally in the midst of a crisis. Because if you have a relationship with God and you've been spending time in your life meditating on God's promises in your life, and you spent that time allowing God's promises and the word of God to be built up on the inside of you, you will allow God's word to help you to stay calm and not panic in the midst of a crisis. I'll give you an example. One of my favorite scriptures that I stand on as a man is found in Isaiah 41:10. Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you with my right hand of righteousness. That's Isaiah 41:10. And so when I am faced with a crisis, when my household is faced with a crisis, I go to Isaiah 41:10 and I encourage myself to stay calm and not panic as we go through our crisis. Whether if that crisis is financial, whether if that crisis is regarding my health, whether if that crisis is regarding my family, my daughter, I learned and I'm learning to stay calm and not panic. Because when you panic, that's the worst time to make decisions. When you are in a place emotionally where you are panicking, that's the wrong time to be making life decisions, because when you make decisions in the midst of panic, you can end up making things worse. That is why it's important in the midst of a crisis to stay calm and not panic. Isaiah 46:10 says, "Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the heathens, I will be exalted in all the earth." So if my mind and my heart and my spirit is being still and knowing that He's in control, that He has my times in His hands, I don't have to panic, but I can stay calm, trusting Him that He will give me the wisdom, the guidance to be able to get through and deal and overcome my crisis. My final tip that I want to share with you, and those of you who have been watching me live in the chat, or those of you who watched the replay up to this point, to deal and overcome crisis in your life, you have to understand crisis is an opportunity for growth. Not only does crisis require change, but crisis presents an opportunity for growth for you and me in our life. How does that happen? Opportunities for growth, for maybe learning new skills. Learning new skills. The crisis where you've been laid off from your job or you've been fired from your job and you are now on unemployment, and just a matter of weeks, unemployment is now getting ready to grow, to run out. And you're not certain how you're going to keep income in the home so that bills can be paid. The mortgage, the rent, the car payment, and car insurance are going to get paid. You're not sure. So you decide to, you know, go for a walk. And as you're going for a walk, and let's just say it's in the wintertime and it's snowing, and you see an elderly person, an elderly woman whose home is just filled with snow. The grounds are filled with snow, and she can't get to her mailbox. And so you decide to go get your shovel and you begin to shovel the snow from her front porch to make a pathway so she can get to her mailbox. You shovel her sidewalk so to make sure that people can get access to her residence. You shovel her driveway, though she doesn't have a car, but you shovel the driveway so that family members can be able to pull in and to see her. She offers you money, but you don't take it. And so you take that good deed and you move on, and you see another elderly person, an elderly man, same condition, same situation, and you repeat the process. At the end of the night, you're thinking, did these two good deeds. And as I kind of look at my neighborhood, there are a lot of elderly individuals who are in this situation. So what do? You grab your sons, and then the next day after school, you both begin to shovel snow, who people who need shoveling assistance, and you take the financial rewards that they offer you, and you shovel so much that you end up having enough income to be able to make sure that the bills are paid for the next 3 months. You see the crisis that you were dealing with, and not the uncertainty of how you were going to keep the bills paid, and then the opportunity for growth happened. So you're still on unemployment. You go into the spring, there's no more snow, but you see opportunities to clean the same elderly woman and elderly gentleman's backyard. and help it from a landscaping standpoint. They offer you money, but you don't take it. At the end of the night, you ponder it, and then you say, "Hey, I'm gonna get my boys, and after school, we're gonna go start cleaning the neighborhood up." And guess what? They pay you. So now you are slowly putting together your own landscaping company that you had no idea that, because maybe you were an IT person. Maybe you were a person who worked in the back office of a financial institution. And now you're doing this landscaping work because the crisis of you losing your job and not having income provides you the opportunity for growth, for you to develop new skills on how to run your own business as an entrepreneur. Are you getting this? Are you getting this? This is exciting me. I hope it's exciting you. Opportunity for growth, for you to develop new skills that now you may have to start going back and learning Excel, going back and learning about a new career field in IT. Opportunity for growth happens a result of because of crisis. It happens because of crisis. And so those of you who are watching me this morning, those of you who are driving in your car and listening to me this morning, this is an episode to encourage you that the crisis that you're dealing with is not come to destroy you. It's not come because God is mad at you. It's come because it's provided you an opportunity to embrace change and an opportunity for you, growth, for you to develop new skills in your life. But most importantly, crisis is to get your attention so you can get your life and your relationship right with God. If I say nothing else but this one point, it's to get your relationship right with God. There's so much going on in this world that from a crisis standpoint, we don't even want to turn on the news. Some of us don't even want to turn on the news anymore and watch the news because of the crisis that we're hearing people are going through. And though they're going through a crisis, we're going through our own. But here are 5 tips for you this morning to know how to deal with crisis. Hey, if you've gotten great value out of this episode of Man Talk Live, hey, give me a thumbs up this morning. Share this on your favorite social media platform. If you are new to the Real Men Rising YouTube channel and you want to learn how to be a great husband, a devoted father, a man of integrity, if you are a man who said, I'm tired of listening to the noise and I'm going to put a pause to the noise and I just need to hear real conversation about the real issues in my life that offer real solutions, subscribe to the channel this day. I want to say good morning to a good old friend. We haven't talked in a while. Good stuff. Thank you, sir. Thank you. So glad. Hicks News Media, James Hicks. See you, sir. I see you on social media, IG. You can follow him at Hicks News Media YouTube channel. He has some great different types of content. You can also find him on Hicks News Media on Instagram as well. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. At the end of the day, crisis, we need to understand in summary, it's normal. We're all going to go through crisis in our life. In summary, we have to understand that crisis is come not to destroy us, but crisis has come. There we go. Crisis has come to get me and your attention. Crisis has come because it was requiring change in our life. It's requiring change in your life and in my life. Sometimes the crisis, again, this is though we talk to men, again, we talk about real issues. real conversation about offering real solutions. The issues that you are having in your sex life, maybe because there is a crisis because of you watching too much porn. I digress. Another topic, another subject. Crisis is an opportunity for growth for you and me. I'll leave it there. I'll leave it there. Hey, want to appreciate each and every one of you um, checking out this episode. Please share this episode with another man. Share this episode with another woman if you are a lady watching it who has an important man in their life and they need to be encouraged to understand what's going on in the mind, in the heart of that person. We will see you on the next episode of Man Talk Live. God bless.